There's a great debate going on why our ratings are down and people are not interested in NBA. Is it threes or load management?
Like, these players now play accidental basketball, and it drives me and Phil crazy because it's all penetrating pitch. You may make the shot, you may not. You have no idea who's going to be open or whatever. It's accidental basketball. We play basketball with purpose.
You know, our game is supposed to be more structured. Well, this game we're watching now, I don't know what the we're watching now.
When looking through NBA history at various eras, all these eras are unique, special, and possess some strengths as well as some weak points. And looking at our current game, while there are some big-time strengths like outside shooting, I think the finer points, the finer details, have been lost in the three-point craze. Now, of course, having that opinion, you'll be labeled as a hater, an old head, and someone who quote-unquote doesn't appreciate the best version of basketball. For a lot of modern-day NBA fans, they think this era, its players, is above reproach and above criticism, as the majority of them are just kind of blissfully ignorant to this era's flaws and shortcomings. They think everything today was better than everything yesterday.
Got the switch you wanted. Yep. Grimes to Embiid, into Porzingis. Again, he hits the deck.
See what Paul decides to do. He's been torching the Nets. And he got the CP swing. The floor.
And Garland commits the foul. 32 seconds remaining. Harden.
Basketball in its current form doesn't have the universal appeal that it once had in past eras. And of course, saying that, getting labeled a hater, an old head, and being blamed for the NBA currently failing, I just find kind of downright hilarious. As looking back at the start of the season, these same fans back then to the NBA had no problems, no flaws, no viewership issues, or no problems with universal appeal. Now, fast forward a couple months, what happens? Now these same fans that there was no problem start blaming Charles Barkley for the NBA's fall off. A couple months later, they start blaming ESPN, Shannon Sharp, Stephen A. Smith, the talking heads on TV. And nowadays, they're blaming old school fans and quote-unquote nostalgia for the current NBA's shortcomings.
Nostalgia is killing the NBA.
I don't believe you.
For the modern day NBA fan, they'll blame everybody but the current day players, their favorite player, or the commissioner of the NBA for this era's shortcomings. And here's the honest truth. If basketball is good, basketball is thriving, fans will tune in and watch the game and indulge in the product. If it's not good basketball, they're going to tune out, not watch the games, and not be interested. Back around 2015, 2016, those same talking heads, old NBA fans, and especially Charles Barkley, were still on TV making noise about the current NBA. But the thing is, the NBA back then was pulling in tons of viewers. And of course, those Cavs vs. Warriors finals did gangbusters in viewership and overall interest. Because of course, at the end of the day, basketball sells basketball. If the talking heads say basketball stinks, you watch the game, it's amazing, you'll brush them off and not listen to them and keep watching. But if basketball does stink, you're being told it stinks, then you will turn off because the overall product is not entertaining. That's where we are right now in 2025. The overall product matches what the talking heads are saying.
What is worse for the NBA? A bigger problem, load management or too many three-pointers?
Dan, that's a great question because I think they're both problems. It's just now it's a three-point shooting contest.
We've lost the dunks, and what we loved and what we've always loved is competition. There's no competition when it's a three.
And no disrespect to the Chicago Bulls, but there's no reason they should ever shoot 53s. Like, there's not enough great shooters.
From the perimeter, 5 to shoot. Long three. Williams, a three on the way. That's no good. Bulls continue to struggle from three-point territory tonight.
Utilize a screen. See, that's another layup. Kobe got to take that. See, you give it, you pass on a two.
In a lot of ways, modern-day NBA fans exhibit one trait known as toxic positivity, as no matter what they're served up, what they're shown, they think that thing is the greatest, the best ever. It's just fantastic, and all these fans are being positive for the sake of being positive. Because, of course, if you're negative, you'll be labeled as a hater and old head, and someone who, quote, doesn't understand the modern game. And look, as someone who gets that old head label, at this point, I kind of take pride in it. I appreciate past eras of basketball, what they did for the NBA, and don't downplay them constantly to lift up the current era. Was every era perfect? Of course not. But each era, one after the other, was a building block for the current NBA. And fans like myself seeing current day superstars not upholding the same standards as past players, we get kind of pissed off. As of course looking at load management, the All-Star game, players making excuses, guys in the past, if they did that, they would get absolutely crucified. But for modern day players, they're just above being critiqued, above any quote-unquote hate from the average NBA fan. And in regards to current day NBA fans, they just think being negative, it's, something you shouldn't do, you shouldn't say mean things, or call out players for obvious BS. And again, that's not who I am, who I ever will be. And of course, being negative isn't always inherently a bad thing. Look back at the 1990s, David Stern in the middle of the 90s, the golden age of basketball. He was sharpening the game every single year, looking for new rule changes, how to tweak the game, make it more exciting and enjoyable for the average day fan.
Recently, I've heard both Pat Riley and Chuck Daly say that unless there are rules changes, and they didn't say this critically, they just said it as an expert's observation, unless there are rules changes, this will be closer to the style of play throughout the league the next few years than in the last decade that was, of course, dominated by Jordan, Johnson, and Bird.
I think you could expect us to look at not rules changes, but possibly tightening up the calls a bit in the looking at it over the summer, perhaps a little bit more movement, letting players get a little freer than this very tough defense that's being played allows them to.
If David Stern in 1994, in the middle of the NBA's prime, is getting critiqued and nitpicked, Adam Silver and current day players aren't above anything. And those two guys critiquing David Stern's NBA, kind of blowing the whistle on where the NBA was going, it was Pat Riley and Chuck Daly. And them saying the NBA was getting too physical, being too bogged down by physicality, that wasn't them being haters, being too negative. That was them having the foresight of where the NBA was headed. And of course, they were absolutely right. From 1997 to 04, the dead ball era, that is the lowest paced, most defensive era in NBA history, as teams in that stretch would average only 95.0 points per game, reaching a low of 92 points in 1999. When it comes to that dead ball era, scoring 20-25 points per game, even cracking 30, was a monumental feat. But you gotta admit, that era was a tad bit too defensive compared to the early 90s, late 80s, and especially the 1970s. What most fans look for, most fans love, is a balanced NBA. Not teams scoring 60, 70 points a game in the postseason. That's too much of a slugfest. But on the flip side, teams scoring 130, 140 points, at that point offense and scoring just becomes so devalued, and getting 2 points here, 2 points there is basically a formality for any NBA superstar. And look, not to brag too much, but I watch a ton of 80s games, a ton of 90s games, and a little bit of the 2000s. And watching all those eras, like I said earlier, they're not all perfect. The 1980s, a lot of teams kind of standing around watching, looking to dish the ball into the post for the center power forward to make a play or score a basket. The 1990s, even the best shooters who are wide open off one pass wouldn't take that shot. In some ways, a quirk and a flaw of that era. And of course the 2000s, in the paint, just so crowded, bogged down, it's tough to watch a lot of possessions.
All of them on three-pointers. Get met by O'Neal. Van Horn had the shot deflected. If you're going to come and give help when Cassell rolls into that low post against Iverson.
Gotten 20-plus points in every one of the quarters. In the games they've lost, they had one quarter where they didn't get up.
Alley's into the game. He gets the big guy. Shaq. Short. Shaq.
Damn! Like I've said time and time again, each era in NBA history has had their flaws. But the big time difference, someone like David Stern was active in fixing those flaws. Someone like Adam Silver, just kind of aloof, asleep at the wheel, and very much nonchalant about the NBA, becoming super offensive. If you want to blame nostalgia for Adam Silver, being a lackluster commissioner, go ahead, knock yourself out. The majority of fans who hate this era, complain about this era, they're not doing it out of hate for the sport of basketball. What they're doing it out of is respect for past eras and perspective of past eras. If you dislike the modern NBA, you're not crazy and old head or being a hater. What you recognize this era has a big time flaw in its game. As of course basketball in the 2020s has almost become mathematical, an algorithm, and a problem to solve. As of course the overall mantra of this era is 3/2. That line of thinking right there, the analytics line of thinking, has kind of rounded out the NBA's edges, what makes teams unique and some players otherworldly. And look, I'm not saying every single team plays the exact same way, runs the exact same sets. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, the majority of teams play under one umbrella and one belief system. For a lot of these NBA teams, they might have different routes to taking threes, but at the end of the day, they're still taking a bazillion threes.
Both these teams rank in the top 5 in terms of points per game. Pocket pass to Porzingis on the pick and pop.
And they talk about, look, the Lakers bigs, they're kind of short there, but they always have that, where LeBron can go to the 4, he can go to the small ball 5.
Gordon, another 3. Get back on track. Much better three-point shooter than that 35% he's at right now.
Siakam in the corner for 3.
Young with a little sauce and threw it to the wrong guy. Vassell picks it off. Fox in transition, pulls the 3, knocks it down.
So that right there is the end of the video, and I'll say one last thing. If you blame certain fan bases, certain fans, for the NBA's overall decline, you are copping out majorly for the players, the commissioner, and the NBA as a whole. If basketball nowadays was balanced, well-rounded, a great blend of offense and defense, people would watch in droves. Right now, we're starved for sports. No baseball, NFL's done. It's basically NBA season. If people want to watch basketball, they will watch basketball. And if fans critique that basketball, they're wrong. You know what's going to happen? Fans will ignore that person and push them aside. But the thing is, those fans are actually right, recognize the current NBA's problems, and have their hand on the pulse of the majority of NBA fans. You want to defend this era tooth and nail, have at it, knock yourself out, but the one thing I won't do is blame you for the NBA's failures. Who I'll blame is the current day players, the mega superstars, and of course, Adam Silver. At the end of the day, the buck stops with Adam Silver. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.